we can all agree that being fired is the norm now. So if you are working and your batch doesn't work and you're going to get a meeting with HR, you're about to get fired, and it's just the norm. So it is how it is. You can't really dispute it. Everybody's doing layoffs. So you're most likely, if you have a meeting with HR on a Friday afternoon, you're going to get fired, right? And a good company and a bad company, the distinguishment, from good to bad, used to be like, oh, they're not doing layoffs and whatnot. No, now everybody's doing layoffs. So that is out the door. So what sets a good company apart from a bad company? Well, we just reached new lows. And how do you mean, like, we reach new lows? Well, normally when you get fired, you meet with HR, like I said, and you get fired on a Friday afternoon, right before you go home, so you can actually cry over the weekend and not, on a Monday or Tuesday. So you have the weekend to recover. And I'm asking you, would you rather get fired on a Friday or on a Monday where you can actually job search for 2 days, and actually, be in a working week? Or do you want to get fired on a Friday so you have the whole weekend to kind of moan about it? So back to the video. So if you're a good or bad company, so read this article that UK, whatever, UGC or whatever this company is, let go people over 4th of July. And so there is this Reddit post that's been circling, so I'm posted right here. And it is basically saying that people got fired via FedEx label. So they got an email saying, please return your computer to FedEx. And you had time to open that. And then they kicked you out of the system and said, bye-bye, bye-bye. So this is an absolute low, because they didn't even revoke your access. They didn't even do anything else. They just said, you're done and send your computer back. So this has the same feeling as showing up to work and actually your badge's not working. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, you've been terminated. So really, really sad. New lows, right? So where is this going? So this is going into the precedent of we can do whatever we want and you just got to eat it. So we'll cook it, and regardless how big the pile of shit is, you just got to eat it. And you would think that companies, huge companies, actually have it planned out. They plan, they execute. Yeah, the plan might be sloppy, but at least they plan. But just doing layoffs and just sending out the FedEx label, that is a new low. And guess what? What comes around goes around. And I think sometimes these big corporations forget that. And when it comes and goes around, it's just not going to be pretty once, it is our turn to fire them. And then we're going to have no issues of just saying bye-bye, and we're going to do the same thing, right? So this is just insane. And now we're setting a precedent that kind of everything is okay and everything is doable, right? So once you reached the lowest of the low, the lowest barrel of the barrels, then where do you go from here? I cannot expect another worse thing to get fired than what these people went through. Well, I actually can, but I cannot verify this. This is just one person's comment, and this is the comment. So this person actually said that they got fired because their boss has been doing nutty stuff. So I had to blur some of it out, but you can kind of make the little gist of it and get to see that they actually, this guy was working at a hotel or something, and this boss, he had to clean the boss's car while that wasn't even his job, and then he got fired because he was, hanging out with strippers and, other stuff. So now I'm looking at it like, man, this is no accountability. We have absolutely no accountability. We're just doing, these companies are just doing what they want. And I'm not saying we, because it's not us that are watching these videos. It's these higher ups, these management people that just love to do whatever they want. And just, yeah, I don't even know how these it's just mind-boggling, because how do these conversation even goes? So, like when you have a real conversation in a meeting, trying to decide what the company goes through, you have a meeting and you decide on the strategy. And you're like, hey, we need to let these people go. Let's kind of figure something out. But this seems to me like they said, hey, in the meeting, with the CEO, hey, we need to let some people go. And somebody said, I have this great idea. Instead of having a strategy, let's just send FedEx labels out so people can just send their computers back and then they know. And I'm like, what kind of strategy is that? And how did you pick who gets fired and who not? Maybe it was random. Maybe they just did randoms and they said, you know what? Instead of firing the executive leadership team because they didn't foresee it, then they said, nah, let's fire the doers. Let's fire these people that actually do the work. And then we just double load them with work and make them work 6 days a week. And we can still do whatever we're doing. So we can just keep doing and keep having fun, right? So now I'm like, okay. And I've noticed you guys been in the comment section, you guys been saying, hey, there's so much, that they're working you guys over hours, so much more, like overtime and all that to make up for these losses. So these bosses don't even feel it. And when there's enough room, there's enough middle management in between the top level and the bottom level, why would you even care? Because you're not going to see anything. You're not going to experience it. You're not going to feel it. You're not going to do anything because you just can't see it, right? So, super sad story. We reached a new low. Kind of sad video to make. But now I'm going to go over how the Swiss economy is, because people have been asking me, so how's Switzerland? You're here in Switzerland. How's the Swiss economy? Well, the Swiss economy right now, as you see through all my videos, it's been doing all right. They've been doing constructions because permits here take so long to get for like new development. It's just mind-boggling how long the bureaucracy takes to get anything done, right? So how's the economy doing? Well, Germany's doing not great, and Switzerland is doing all right. But all these Swiss companies have not experienced the AI revolution of layoffs yet. So these Swiss companies are, I would say, a year and a half behind whatever the US is doing. So when the US Silicon Valley kind of, moves through and, AI revolution, we do layoffs, it takes, it just takes time from trends to spread from California to the East Coast, and then to jump the pond from, from New York to Europe takes another few months till these big US corporations lay off people in Europe and around the globe. So FedEx laid off like 2,000, German drivers. That means that these economies are going to suffer. And when U.S. companies, huge U.S. companies, lay off people, it affects everybody, because they're not just going to lay off people in Silicon Valley. They'll lay people off around the globe. Because if demand dries up in the U.S., demand dries up around the world. It's just how it goes. Everything is like the petrodollar and all that kind of stuff. So when the US isn't doing great, neither is the world economy. And no country really booming. Yeah, maybe like local like local countries, but most of them are probably not doing good with all these high interest rates, right? And when you are looking at all these interest rates and the Fed just said, hey, we got to start lowering interest rate because the economy isn't doing that great. No duh, Sherlock. No duh. You threw what was a great thing going, where everybody had money and everybody was doing, instead of just increasing the salaries, of everybody and, keeping up with inflation that way. You were just saying that let's just increase interest rate and just, and make everybody lose their jobs. And when everybody doesn't have any money to spend anymore and can't buy food and do anything, then inflation's going to come down. Yeah, that is a very valid way to get inflation under control when nobody can spend money. But it's also going to hurt a lot of Americans. And sometimes I think these people on Capitol Hill in DC are living in their own little bubble with their friends and all doing all these kind of crazy things that they don't give a shit. So back to Switzerland. It's a very sheltered kind of country, right? So I remember when I still lived in Switzerland, there were seasons for crops. And when there was crop season in Switzerland, they've increased tariffs by like 500% for strawberries. So local farmers can sell their strawberries and at a pretty decent price because you couldn't compete, having them from another country. Because if you brought in your strawberries from another country, you had to pay these high tariffs. And then even though you brought them in, it was triple the money than the Swiss one. So you kind of bought the Swiss one and it wasn't very lucrative for for the local farmers and all that kind of stuff, right? So now people are saying it looks pretty safe, right? It does look pretty safe, but it is not as it is anymore. So I'm hearing people constantly talking about, oh, there's the population decline, the US is, like Switzerland and Europe and Greece, it's all population decline. Yes and no. So I'm a firm believer that the numbers with the population decline are accurate. But what they do not know is that there is so many illegal immigrations, that there's so many illegal immigrants that they will make up for the population decline. They might not be Greece, they might not be Swiss, but there's enough people wanting to live in Europe, in Switzerland, in the United States, that population decline isn't that big of a problem. You just need to find out how you can vet these people and let people in the right way. And then you fix the population problem, right? It's not really a problem of Americans don't want to have kids or something like it. It's just that, you have it so hard to immigrate to another country that it's just brutal to, to go to the bureaucracy and trying to move to another country. And once you do that, it kind of limits, your country from accessing, great talent, right? And you can actually compete. If you have a little bit more free movement, you can secure top talent around the world. What they're doing anyways with with remote work and all that, because all these people that got laid off probably are going to get hired again overseas for way cheaper. So it almost feels like that they did tests, that this COVID thing was a test to see if we can do remote work, and then we outsource to cheaper countries. And that's why we have so strict border rules and immigration policies, so we can keep labor in different countries way cheaper and we can make even more profits. Let me know if that makes any sense to you, but for me it kind of does, because when I think about it, it's like if we can pay people a few bucks an hour to do something that an American would charge so much money for, um, why not do that so we can have more profits? And then the US is just going to be a place for pure rich people. And I feel like Switzerland is also one of these places where it's like a place for pure rich people. And even though in Switzerland, they say, oh, all these people are middle class, that is nonsense. You either have very, very wealthy people or poor people. I would be one of these poor people. So in Switzerland, just because you live in an apartment doesn't mean you have no money. I've known people that own 3 to 4 apartment complexes and that rent their own apartment. And they say, oh, I don't want to deal with, with my own apartment. I already deal with, apartment complexes. I just want to rent, be local, be centralized, and I don't want to worry about it too much, but have millions. And they're just as happy. They don't drive a flashy car. They drive a little car, and they're just like, I'm gonna give the money to my kids or something else. So you gotta, you gotta check a year from now to see how Switzerland is doing actually, right? So it's gonna be interesting. And crime here is on the rise. So for these people that says, oh, it's very safe here, yeah, people don't really rob you and stab you and shoot you, but people do property crimes. So what happens a lot here is that people go and steal cars. They steal, they pickpocket, they rob, they rob jewelry stores, they do all that. And if you can be across the border in a few hours, you're good. And if you live in another country, like, in Slovakia, Romania, Albania, all these other countries where you can live fairly cheap, even Poland, you can actually steal a pretty decent amount of stuff in one night and be across the border and be done. So imagine you can steal stuff and actually go and create and make 60, 70, maybe 100, $200,000 in one night, and then head across the border. And once you're across the border, there's no police, because police agencies don't talk. It's almost like federal agencies, like how they communicate. And now imagine different countries with different languages trying to communicate with each other about crimes. And there's different standards of crimes that have different levels of threshold where it's actually what they actually need to do, right? To get extradited and whatnot. And so sometimes it's not even worth extraditing them, because then Swiss taxpayers or your local taxpayers need to pay for the money and no need to pay for your jail or whatnot. And courts here are very slow, and they always take the side with the person that actually is charged. So then they say, oh, we can't do that, we can't do this. And in the US, this is what I love about it, is crimes, if you commit multiple crimes in the US, they're starting to count, they bulk them, and then you're like, oh, this is count 1, count 2, count 3, and then you're done. In Switzerland, it doesn't work like that. In Switzerland, if you're an immigrant and you commit crimes, they'll tell you that immigration failed you, and then they're trying to give you a social worker, community classes, trying to get you on the right track. But some people cannot be saved even with these classes, right? So let me know what you guys think about this. It's just a different viewpoint about doing things. Yeah, I'm not a big fan because we're so lenient on crime. And check out some Swiss jail cells. Look at how all these Swiss jail cells look. And I've actually worked for the city, and one of these jail cells that I went to, they asked me if I wanted lunch, and I said, why do I want lunch in jail? And they said, oh, you can pick from 6 menus. It's kosher, it is vegan, it is Hindu. They have one for non-pork because of for Muslims. They had all these crazy meals. So whatever you wanted to, they had like 5 meals to pick from. So I'm just like, man, this does not feel like prison. And depending on which prison, you actually get, you walk around